Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you don't notice, things are a little bit different. Just kidding, they're not that much different other than you can see my mic and there's no bed sheets on the bed. Anyways, welcome back. And we're so glad you're here. And I just have a few announcements, actually one announcement if you don't know already. If you are joining us live, I just want you to know that next week, May 13th, I'm going to be answering your question. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about. If you head over to slido.com, that's slido.com, and enter the code ask-it-2020, you'll find that there are a list of questions there. And what you can do is either you can like them, which bumps them up to the top, or ask your own questions. So next week, May 13th, I'm going to be going over all of those questions. And now that you know that code, you have to know this too. The last day to like a question or submit a question is going to be Mother's Day. That's May 10th. So be sure to get your question in there or like a question because I'm going to be answering them all again next week. And that's, again, really the only announcement that I had for today. I don't know why I said there were a few because there's only one. But now on to today's encouragement. God is bigger. Now, if you're a human, you've probably felt this way at one time or another, or you've probably asked this question of, how is God going to make this better? And whether you believe in God or not, you've probably silently or accidentally said this prayer. God, I just wish things were different. God, I just wish you would take care of these things. God, why couldn't something be different? And I think part of the reason why we do this is because we are always looking for something bigger when those big life events happen to us. Whether it's those big worries that we have or those big joyous occasions that we have. I mean, we're bound to give a shout out to God at some point or other. Yeah, thank God for that one. But then we find those times where it's not easy to give any kind of things towards God. In fact, some of us have lost hope in asking God for anything. So what we did was we prayed in those events that were possible, but then God didn't show up. And so we start to question, well, if God didn't show up in those events that were possible, what would make him reliable in those events that are impossible? I mean, have you ever felt like this? Have you ever known someone to feel like this? Again, if you're human, the answer is probably yes. Where you've been struggling to find a group of friends or a friend, where you might be feeling the weight of mom and dad's stress, where maybe dad lost his job, or you just have mom and she's struggling to make ends meet, or you hear those words over and over said, I just don't know how we're going to make it this month. Where money is tight and stress is high. I mean, have you ever prayed to God to say, I just want things to go right? And then after that prayer, it just feels like 100 more things go wrong. And I don't know if I've ever felt this way more than when my wife and I were trying to buy a house. It was just a crazy time, stress, nuts. Let me explain what was going on. So at the time, we were living in our downtown apartment, and it was just a really, really cool place. I mean, things were happening and moving. Downtown Fresno was changing a little bit. And we just had our new puppy, Rory. Okay, get out of here. And we were really getting to this place where we just felt comfortable. We didn't have to worry about much. Things were just nice and easy, and life was just generally good. Again, we had a great community. We had great friends. We had great friends that lived nearby. We had the cutest little puppy. We had a life plan, and that all changed. This one night, my wife and I had gone to visit some friends, and we had taken separate cars for some reason, but she had beat me home. And when I got home, I found her locked in the closet. Just kidding. She wasn't locked in the closet. She locked herself in the bathroom. I don't know why I said closet. So I get home and I find that she has locked herself in the bathroom. And from the outside of the door, I can hear tears. And so this isn't normal. So what do I do as a protective husband, as something that's going wrong? I start to bang on the door, right? Hey, open the door. Open this door now. You have till the count of 3. And if you don't open this door at the count of 3, I'm gonna knock this door down. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's not exactly what happened. But I really did find her locked into the bathroom, and I really did hear her crying. And so as the person that I am, I'm knocking at the door saying, like, what's going on? Like, this isn't normal. Like, what's happening? And so I wait on the other side, which feels just like a million years. But she finally comes out, and she's obviously been crying, and she has a pregnancy test in her hand. Yes, folks, she is pregnant. And we were not expecting that. And so my wife is crying, coming out of the door. And the part that freaked her out the most was that I wasn't freaking out. In fact, I remember her coming out, showing me the pregnancy test, and me being like, wow, that's something. That's exciting. And then she starts to cry even more. And I remember her saying, listen, I'm going to go back into that bathroom. And when I come out, you better start freaking out. And Rory, you better grow up real fast. It's now one of my favorite memories of her. But there we are. We're in our downtown apartment where all of our checklists of being comfortable are now shattered. We're downtown. We don't have a plan. We still have a brand new puppy and we don't know what to do. And we're trying to figure out life. So the first thing we thought we'd try to figure out was our housing situation. Do we stay in this apartment? Do we try to find a new place? Do we rent? Do we lease? What do we do? And so we just say, well, let's just try to find a house. Let's see what's out there. And this process was grueling. I mean, we would just drive around places like neighborhoods and be like, are there any houses for sale? It doesn't really work like that. And so we find a realtor, and this realtor is really super nice, but then she starts to show us all these houses where we pull up and my wife and I look at each other and we know exactly what we're thinking. Oh, heck nah. But we're such pushovers. There was one house that we were showed that we actually signed for without even seeing it. And it turned out to be horrible. So we eventually had to break up with our realtor. But after that first stint of trying to find a house, we just felt so defeated. I mean, we had people lined up to move into our apartment, to take over our lease, to, fix that part of it. But finding a house to live in after that was just horrible. It was a nightmare. And so we put that on pause for a second. We knew we had people lined up to take over our lease, and we knew we had a few months cushion, but that few months cushion was running out. So we had to jump back out there. And that's exactly what we did. We jumped back out there to try to find somewhere to live because, well, we got another one coming along. And in this season of just feeling defeated, I remember us praying and praying and praying, like, God, just give us a sign, make it clear for us, put the right people in our lives, just make it known that this is the place and this is the decision that we need to be doing. Just make it right. So our 9-month, time period is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so we're getting out there trying to just figure out where we're going to do life at. And then finally, we think we find something. It's the right amount of room. It has, a big backyard. It's in our price point. And even the name that the house is on is the name of my mother-in-law. And so we start to think, well, this is the answer to our prayers. God is definitely there. And now he's answering our prayers because this is our checklist. Backyard, enough rooms, great space. The name of the street is the name of my mother-in-law. How is this not set out for us? But there was just one catch, that there was already an offer put in there. But the hopeful thing was that they haven't put their money down. And so they had literally 3 days to put their money down. And so we said, okay, well, we're second in there. If they don't do it, we're jumping on this. And we were praying and praying and praying, being like, okay, they're not going through with it. They're not putting their money down because this is our house. God has set this aside for us. And so 1 day went by and we're like, whew, 1 day closer. 2 days went by. Oh, we're feeling confident. This is going to be ours. It's so cool. We got decorations and paint and all this stuff planned out of what we're going to do in our new place. Oh, yeah. The 3rd day comes and we're like, okay, now it's just about counting down the hours. We don't hear anything at 10 o'clock. We don't hear anything at 12 o'clock. We don't hear anything at 2 o'clock. It's getting later and later in the evening. And guess what? Those darn people took our stinking house. Yeah, who waits till the last day to put money down? Who would want to steal a house from us, very godly people? Again, God, we are your people. Why don't you just throw us a bone? We've been praying for you for forever. So it didn't work out. And again, we hit the ground with our knees praying God, what's going on here? I don't get it. It seemed perfect. And yet you're not coming through for some reason. It's getting kind of scary because I have a wife who's 7 months pregnant and it's getting hot. And if you know pregnant women in the heat, they don't really mix. But luckily we find another house equally as good, equally as awesome in our price range, has a backyard, has enough space, all those things. And so we get the process started. And as we get this process started, everything seems to be going smooth in the beginning. it takes like, 40 days or a month or something. I don't know the whole process, but it takes some time to get this whole thing started. And so we start the process, and the process is starting smooth. We're turning in all of our paperwork. We're turning in all our financial stuff. Everyone's telling us it's going to be okay. And so we're super excited about all this stuff that's going on. But then the bad news starts to roll in. It just seemed like one thing after another, after another, after another just kept happening. Oh, we lost this part of your paperwork. Can you turn it in again? Oh, it looks like we're gonna have to verify your income again and again. Oh, did we verify your income yet? Oh, can you come and sign these papers one more time? Oh, the e-signature? Sorry about that. We're gonna need that in ink. Hey, we know it's only a week away, but can you bring your verification one more time? And then we get news that our loan might not even go through a week before closing. Do you know what that means? It means we might not have the money to buy this house, which means we don't get a house. And so we're trying to work together with everybody, the realtor, the lender, the bank, whatever it might be, of like getting whatever they need to approve us. And then our lender goes out of town, which is fine, right? He goes out of town. So what? He has people to take care of this stuff. Well, no one can get a hold of him. And it looks like right now we're not getting a house, because if you can't get a hold of the lender gets you the money, and the money gets you the house. So no lender, no money, no house. And this is literally days before closing. So we went from this place of just feeling comfortable and having a life plan and having things set in place to really this life of chaos, of not knowing what was going on, of questioning God, of praying and praying and praying and wanting good news, but only to get 100 bad notifications. And so at this point, we were just feeling so defeated. And we have this hard talk with our realtor, and we really asked, like, what are the chances of us actually getting this house? Like, should we be looking for something else? Like, should we be looking for a rental? Because we're already being kicked out of our apartment. We already told them, like, yeah, we've got a house and people are going to be moving in. We are just living out of boxes. What do we do? And our realtor just says, yeah, maybe you should be looking for somewhere else. So we say, okay, that's it. And let me tell you, having no life plan at that point, of trying to build a plane as you go it, trying to figure out life as you live it, it was rough. And so what we did was we just looked and we tried to find a house to rent. And luckily we found a house to rent. So we called the lady and she said, well, I have an open house tomorrow if you want to show by. We happened to be the first people there. We said, this will do. And we wrote her a check right then and there. And so we went home and we said, at least we have a place to put our boxes now. And it really was just kind of a small sigh of relief that at least we had a place to live. And I mean, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't what we wanted, but thank God, ? So we went to bed that night, and the next morning we get a call from the lender and the realtor, and they both say that this house is now your home. And we're just like exhausted at this point. We're just like, what are you talking about? Like, we can't play this game anymore. A week ago, you said, yeah, the house is in the bag. 3 days ago, it was all on the fence. 2 days ago, we were more unsure. A day ago, we didn't have a house at all. And now today you're telling us we have a house? Like, this doesn't make any sense. What's going on? How did this all happen? And the realtor and the lender are talking to us and they say, we don't know exactly how it all happened, but everything came together. You have the money, you're approved. You just need to sign this one last piece of paper and the house is yours. And so we're just like, well, what? We don't actually believe it. We say, like, once we sign those papers, maybe then we'll believe it, but we don't actually believe it. And so we went down and we signed the papers and it said our name and that address. And then we finally were handed the keys and we were just like, how did this happen? It was this impossible nightmare where there was tons of stress and uncertainty, heartache, confusion, anger, not only at the people around us, but mostly just at God, of like, God, why would you send us on this quest, this impossible quest to find a place and just feel like you're just silent, like you're not doing anything. But we look back and we really see how God was in the middle of all of those things, that he was bigger than our confusion, than our heartache, than our anger, than whatever it was. But maybe you feel the same way for whatever situation you're in, that you have all this stress and uncertainty and anger and heartache and confusion. And you're just like, God, where are you? How are you going to make this better? Are you even here? Are you even in the middle of this at all? Like, do you even care? When are you going to do something? And this is the thing that I want you to know, that God is bigger. God is bigger than all of that stuff. God is bigger than your mess. God is bigger than your doubt. God is bigger than your worries. God is bigger than your feelings. Now, I want to show you this little lesson that I remember a teacher doing when I was in school. Now, I don't remember what the point exactly was, but I'm going to use it to make a point that God wants to make. So she took a piece of paper, just a regular size piece of paper, and she asked the class, can you cut a hole big enough for you to step through? And all of us were just like, what? Yeah, I think if I restart like that, doesn't work. And it just didn't work for any of us. But I think that's the beautiful thing about life in this illustration, is that sometimes life doesn't work out the way you think it ought to work out. And sometimes you need to go to something bigger to figure out what that design is, to figure out what that purpose is, to figure out how to get through the big life events. In Ezekiel 37, you can read about this guy Ezekiel. He was a prophet, but he was feeling kind of downtrodden because of all this bad news that he was getting, that the people of Israel were going to be destroyed and taken over, and they're just all spiritually dead. And so God is kind of having a talk with Ezekiel, or Ezekiel's talking to God, and he's saying, like, how are things going to work out? Like, how are you going to make this better? And so God gives him a vision, and he takes him to this valley of dry bones, and you should read it. It's a pretty interesting story. But God says, Ezekiel, look at all these dry bones in this dry valley. And as he's looking at them, God asks him a question. He says, what can make these bones alive again? And well, Ezekiel's like, well, you could only answer that, God. Like, I don't know. So God says, listen, if I breathe life in them, they will move. They'll dance for me even. They'll line up in order. I can make these dry, dead bones alive if I just breathe into them. And so they're having this conversation, and God says to Ezekiel, listen, I want you to speak these words. I want you to say that I will breathe life into these people. So Ezekiel speaks these words, and to his surprise, guess what happens? Well, the bones start to get up, and they start to be covered in flesh and muscle and skin, and they line up, and there's this great army in front of them. And sure, this is just a vision, but this really goes to the point of how powerful God is, that he could take a valley of dry bones, and if he chooses to speak into them, he can make them alive. Or think about how in John chapter 11, when Jesus goes to visit his friend Lazarus, who's dead in this tomb, and Martha comes up to him, the sister of Lazarus, and says, Jesus, if only you were here, my brother wouldn't be dead. And again, Jesus takes what seems impossible and makes it possible. And he says to Martha, listen, your brother will rise again. And that's when he speaks into the tomb, and Lazarus comes walking out with full of the, garments that they wrap him in, and like this crazy thing that's going on. And it's just nuts to think, like, again, Martha has an idea of what life should look like, that God should be doing these things. If he were only there, then my brother wouldn't be dead right now. But yet God comes in the picture and he says, listen, it might not be what you look like, but your brother's going to rise again. Things are going to be okay. So when things don't look the way that you think they ought to look, don't doubt God, because again, he is bigger. He is bigger than your circumstances. And just like he's bigger than this problem of stepping through paper, which seems impossible, of course, unless you know a greater, bigger plan, someone with a master plan, and you're wondering, how do I do it? And he's like, well, I can show you how to do it, or just trust me and I'll show you someday. It might not look the way that you think it ought to look, but trust me, I've got this. So look at this piece of paper. It's torn to shreds. How am I supposed to step through that still? I don't understand what's going on. And this is what life looks like a lot of the times. It's like, I don't get why you made that cut. I don't know why you cut there. I don't know why life looks like this. How is this supposed to help me, God? But just watch. And just like that, I stepped through a piece of paper. And sure, it doesn't look the way you thought it might look, but you did it. You did the seemingly impossible thing. God is bigger. And listen, me saying that, I know it doesn't cure the hurt and the anger and the confusion and the stress and the anxiety, but I do hope it brings some comfort to know that the things that seem impossible aren't impossible to God. The outcome might not look the way you want it to look, but trust me, God is still there. I mean, if God is the creator of the universe, that he created everything from nothing, if God is the God who raised himself up from the dead, then what you're going through, trust me, he is in the middle of it and he has a master plan for it and he is bigger than it. If God could give me a brain to figure out how to step through paper, then trust me, God is in the midst of our circumstances trying to figure out how to get through life. God is bigger. Well, that's all I got for you guys. I hope that was a little bit encouraging, that with God, you can do the seemingly impossible things. And don't forget to submit your questions to Slido. Again, the thing is ask-it.2020, and we'll be answering those questions next week. Have a blessed day, guys.